Chris Collins redefines everyday objects.
Objects, especially things that we collect and we surround ourselves with, serve as placeholders for memory. Things that we remember from certain times or places in our lives that are symbolized by these physical objects. They begin to deteriorate and to fall apart and to be aged by history.
What is your fascination with the transformation process of these objects?
My fascination comes from that root of alchemy, to transmute materials, to bring something into a higher vibration. To take a use object and to pull it into the realm of high art, suddenly we're going through that same transmutation.
Why is it important to look at these objects in a new way?
I think to understand ourselves better, to understand what drives us to alter the world around us, to make things that are going to last well beyond our time scale as humanity. To kind of step back and to understand what our legacy will be in the future. Many times we're so interested in what's happening now that we fail to see what's happening now and how it will be viewed through the lens of history.
What's so fun about finding things?
Exploration is a big part of my process, and that there's kind of an epiphany when you find these objects in remote places as to what brought these to the spot to begin with. You begin to formulate stories within your own mind about what could have been that may or may not be relevant to what really happened. But it allows us space to explore a narrative.
So tell us a little bit about the original objects that you choose, and what is your connection to them?
For the longest time, my work is centered around technological objects, these things that we use to manipulate data, to store data, to really kind of modify the worlds around us. Without that inherent data in them, they're just hollow forms. We can still see the beauty in the inherent object, even without the history of the data that was held within.
And when you're creating, why do you choose certain objects?
What's thrown by the wayside, what we leave behind in our path forward or towards progress, I guess. We leave these objects as kind of leftovers of what was.
Chris, tell us a little bit more about your process and why that process is important.
It's a way to kind of conceptualize what the object itself is about or its relationship to us. The process of gilding my work brings us back to the value of the object. It kind of pulls us back to what was precious, what was held inside of these objects. So with that aesthetic kind of outpouring of the shine of the metal and things like that, that it actually kind of informs its previous use. When we start casting objects, we're taking something that had a very particular use, as of, say, with a computer or a game console or something like that, but then to make it inoperable, we're suddenly taking it out of its use context.
Tell me a story about one of your favorite objects that you found.
I would have to say of everything recently, a small watering can that was shaped as a pig that had been shot full of bullet holes over time out in the desert. It creates such a question of why. Why was someone driven to leave this object here and to shoot it up. It brought so much conceptual weight with it, as to say the pig symbolizing, wealth and perhaps overabundance, but to be filled with bullet holes. The transformation actually happened with the person who interacted with the object, in which perhaps it was a kind of a postmodern destruction ritual of this sacred pig.
And how did you transform it further?
I simply cleaned it up and put it on a pedestal. Recently, I've been very engaged with these pallet straps, these straps that were used to bind logs and materials to a pallet for movement. And they were generally made of steel, and once they're finished, they're cut off and just disposed to lay rusty and falling apart. These pieces I began to gild, and it started to both call attention to their value in a use object, that they held these valuable objects together, but they became something much more. They began to take gesture and form and kind of become drawings. So a lot of these objects that were just cast-offs are suddenly very graceful, ornate lines and shapes.
What do you think a collection of objects like this says about us?
I think it tells a story of our attempt to modify the world around us. When it comes to technology, we use these things to interact, to communicate, and to things like that. But at the same time, with things like buckets, we're moving raw material. We're taking something that is raw from the earth and transporting it and transmuting it into something usable for our culture and our time.
What will citizens of the future think of our things?
I think that the future citizens, when stumbling across what we leave behind, will be perplexed. Number one, what is it? But why was it? Why did we have so many things that live beyond our society itself? These things that were not made from nature, and did not become back part of nature, but existed outside of nature itself.